Hey, David Willis here with ProAudioDVDs.com here. Happy New Year, it's 2017. My apologies for not keeping up with some of these Friday videos over Christmas and New Year. It was a little bit hard to get them out, but we're a new year, let's get cracking. So what I thought I'd do is really start at the beginning with recording and how people decide where they're going to record, what they're going to record on. And the two big questions are you going to do it in hardware or are you going to do it in software in your computer right here? And then once you get into the computer side, then which DAW you're going to use, which I/O box you're going to use, and we'll talk about that in the coming weeks. But the big split we'll talk about this week is hardware versus software. And in terms of the hardware, hardware or software, there are pros and cons for both. Let's look at hardware first. This is not a great example. There's a H6 here. It's not everybody's first choice for multi-track recording. It's just one that I happen to have here. A lot of people are using Tascam DP series like the DP-24, DP-32, or maybe the Zoom R recorders, the R16 or R24. And do you want to go that route or do you want to go into the computer route? Here are the pros and cons of both. In terms of the hardware, here's the great thing about it. When's the last time you looked at a screen on here and it says, please reboot and upgrade Flash? It just doesn't do that, right? You fire this up, it starts up in like 2 seconds flat, and there's no viruses, there's nothing. It just does one thing and it does it really well. The other thing that it does well is that the whole idea behind latency. When you have a hardware recorder like this, you plug a mic in, you plug some headphones in, and you don't expect any delay between when you speak and when you hear. That doesn't necessarily happen on a computer. On a tweaked computer, that will happen, but the whole idea of latency and things being out of time and it ruining the groove because you're not hearing exactly when you're playing, that just doesn't happen in hardware recorders. Another thing is it's transportable. You can take this down to the gig. It's difficult to take your computer and all the stuff down to a gig, right? So I would say in terms of hardware, it would be the transportability of it, it would be the reliability of it, and then also just instant. You fire it up and it's good to go. Here's the downside with it. It's a closed system, of course. When the specs say that you have, one guitar effect and then one reverb/delay effect, that's all you got. You can't really go any further than that. On the DAW side, here's the thing there. You basically have unlimited tracks. That's, it's another thing. On the hardware recorder, if it's a DP-24, you got 24 tracks, right? You don't have any more. On a DAW, you've got unlimited tracks, you've got unlimited effects, which is massive. So when you come down to mixing, you don't just have whatever small amount of effects you have in a hardware device. You have every track, you just have a schmillion effects. And when that comes down to mixing, that's a lot more forgiving. Then you can open up the latency buffer and things like that. We'll talk about that later. But you have an open-ended system in a DAW that you don't have in a hardware device. The downside is that you need to start knowing about things like I/O boxes and latency and getting the right RAM, getting the right hard drives. You used to have to have RAID drives and SATA drives and all that kind of stuff. Nowadays, a lot of the DAWs are pretty forgiving. You can have a fairly modest computer and get really good results there. So one thing you need to know about me, I'm not a zealot in terms of it's got to be hardware, it's got to be that, or then when you get into this side, it's got to be a Mac or it's got to be a PC. I'm so agnostic on this side. You won't see me in Mac forums bashing the PC folks and the PC forums bash. Give me a break, whatever. Some people just love to bitch and moan on the internet. I'm just not that kind of guy. So much so, this Mac right here, I have it set up with Boot Camp. So when I fire it up, I hold down the Option key and it can boot up into Windows or it can boot up into Mac OS. And that way, you can really get some great results here. So which way do you want to go? Do you want to go the hardware side or do you want to go the software side? Again, the benefits of the hardware side, transportability, reliability, and it just works. But it's a closed system. On the software side, you need to learn a little bit more about computers. And in fact, I would suggest, if you're really serious about that, you may want to get a separate computer just for music. And I disconnect it from the internet so that you know that it's not just downloading a bunch of upgrades and say, oh, here's an upgrade that you'll love, and then it breaks something else you have. I would get it up and running so it's running perfectly, and then quite often just disconnect from the internet unless I want to actually go and upgrade some drivers or stuff like that. So that's really kind of the differences between those two. And do you need to choose one or the other? Is it a binary decision? I don't think it is. I've had a lot of really good results. I love the little Zoom recorders, the Zoom R16, the Zoom R24, because they have a ton of inputs, and you can actually sync up 2 of them together. So you can have up to 16 inputs to record all at the same time. That way you can take it down to the gig, you can record everybody, but the great thing is they have SD cards there that you can either then transfer into your computer. But because they're SD cards, I mean, this Mac here has an SD slot in the back. My little laptop has an SD slot there as well. If they don't, you can just go out and get one of those little SD card to USB converters, and that way most of these guys just write in WAV files, and then you can bring them in and then mix down on a DAW. If this subject was which is better to mix on, I mean, there's absolutely no comparison, or there's no contest. A DAW will beat a hardware recorder hands down in the mix down process. It's just the recording process sometimes can be utilized in a hardware recorder. So I guess the thing is, you don't have to decide. In some of those Zoom recorders, they are both a hardware recorder and also an I/O box. So, I might have that in my bag of tricks, and then do the recording on a hardware recorder, and then do the mixing on the software recorder. So give me your thoughts about it. Drop some comments down there. No flames. Don't tell me actually, you can tell me I'm full of it if you like, but give me a reason. Just don't say Macs rule and PCs rule, or hardware, whatever. Right? We're all making music, and whatever tools you can use to get that result is the way to go. I'll see you next week when we'll talk about if you go the DAW route, which DAW should you buy? We'll have some discussion about that next week. Make it a great weekend. Ciao for now.